Did Secretary Hegseth tell you before he ordered the halt in flights to Ukraine of military weapons?
I can't comment on that because I don't remember that. I don't remember ever hearing that, to what you're claiming now.
So your understanding is he never told you he was going to halt these flights?
I just know we're providing them assistance now, but the war ultimately has to end.
You would agree with your prior statement, right, that Putin's Russia is a threat to global stability?
I would agree that in my role as Secretary of State, my job is to bring Russia to the table to end the war.
Putin,
and that's what we're
on Palm Sunday, launched a barrage of missiles, killed a bunch of civilians. Right before his conversation with Trump recently, he launched a bunch of missiles, killed a bunch of civilians. So clearly, Putin is giving the middle finger to you and to the president. I urge you to defeat Putin on the battlefield.
Welcome back. So this exchange with Marco Rubio is one of those moments where the mask slips just a little, and what you see underneath is pretty damn unsettling. Not because of what he admits, but because of how masterfully he dodges, deflects, and carves out exceptions for himself the second accountability shows up. You're about to hear a cabinet-level official verbally agree with the basic foundations of American government, then immediately shrink those principles down to nothing when they start applying to him. And what makes this uncomfortable isn't partisan spin. It's that this is about Supreme Court authority, due process, and whether no one is above the law actually means anything, or if it's just a feel-good slogan until it becomes inconvenient. Watch how confidently Rubio says all the right words, and then watch how fast the logic collapses once real questions arrive. Let's roll the tape.
Recognized Representative Lieu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary Rubio, thank you for being here today. As a member of the legislative branch, I don't have a special exemption to violate the law. You would agree with me, wouldn't you, that in America, no one is above the law?
Of course.
Okay. And in our system of government, it's Congress that makes the laws, the executive branch that executes the laws, and the judicial branch, when there's a dispute, that says what the law is. Is that right?
Within the context of separation of powers, yes.
Okay. And the reason that due process is so fundamental to America is before we put the entire weight of the federal government and snatch someone off the street, we might want to ask, hey, do you have something to say about that? Might we have the wrong person? And in the case of Mr. Garcia, the Trump administration admitted in court that they mistakenly deported him to El Salvador. The Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, said the Trump administration has to facilitate getting him back. Do you believe the administration has to follow that Supreme Court order?
Well, I don't believe he was wrongfully deported. He's an Salvadorian citizen.
That's not my question. Do you believe
that
the Trump administration has to follow the Supreme Court 9-0 unanimous decision?
within the context of separation of powers? That
Okay.
no court can tell me how to conduct foreign policy. They can't tell me what I have to say to a president of another country, nor do I need to tell them what I told the president of another country, because I can't
I'm
conduct
just
foreign
asking you,
policy.
do you believe the Trump administration has to follow the unanimous Supreme Court
I believe we
decision?
are following it.
Okay, so my next question is, what steps have you or the State Department taken to facilitate the return of Mr. Garcia, who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
The conduct of our foreign policy is an executive function, and how I conduct
I'm
it,
just
I don't need
asking
to share
you-
with you.
well,
and
let
I
me
don't
ask you
need to
this.
share with the court.
Have you or the State Department taken any steps to facilitate?
We've taken
the
steps,
return?
but I'm not going to tell you what they are, and I don't have to, because we conduct the foreign policy of the United States, and I can't conduct diplomacy with a
And
foreign
so-
leader if I come to committees and tell you what they said to me,
Right.
what I said to them,
you-
and more certainly a
Now,
court can't tell
so
me to say
you
that
have
either.
taken steps to facilitate Mr. Garcia's return.
We've made those.
And-
We've made that assertion, and we've made those assertions in court, and
All right,
we've
thank
complied.
you. I appreciate that. I'd like to ask you now about Ukraine. On August 24th, 2022, you tweeted the following. In the past 6 months since Putin's criminal invasion of Ukraine, Ukrainians have shown incredible bravery and strength as they fight to defend their homeland. On Ukraine's Independence Day, the free world applauds their courage and celebrates Ukraine's sovereignty. And then also in 2022, you said the people of Ukraine are tough people who will never accept being ruled by Putin. I want to ask you, I assume you continue to believe what you said in 2022, right? That we should celebrate Ukraine's sovereignty and that the people of Ukraine will never accept being ruled by Putin, right?
Yeah, that's why we're trying to end the war.
All right. On April 30th, 2018, you tweeted, "Glad to see State Department confirm delivery of Javelin anti-tank missiles to Ukraine. The U.S. should continue empowering Ukraine and other allies to defend against the threat of Russian aggression." You would agree with your prior statement that the U.S. should continue to support Ukraine against Russian aggression, right?
We've supported them more than anyone in the world.
All right. Unfortunately, it appears Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth went rogue and decided unilaterally to stop support for Ukraine earlier this year. Various news organizations reported that Secretary Hegseth paused military support to Ukraine without President Trump's knowledge. I'm going to read you from one article dated May 6, quote, "Pete Hegseth canceled military aid flights to Ukraine just a week into Trump's second term without the president even knowing, according to Reuters. The order initially sparked mass confusion within the administration as national security officials in the White House, the Pentagon, and the State Department couldn't figure out who ordered the halt in flights. This is yet another example of the chaos and lack of cohesion that Hegseth has brought to the Pentagon from day one. Did Secretary Hegseth tell you before he ordered the halt in flights to Ukraine of military weapons?
I can't comment on that because I don't remember that. I don't remember ever hearing that, to what you're claiming now.
So your understanding is he never told you he was going to halt these flights?
I just know we're providing them assistance now, but the war ultimately has to end.
In 2016, you stated the following: from his repression of the Russian people and the assassination of his critics, to his dangerous invasion of Ukraine and the occupation of Crimea, to his threats against our NATO allies in Central and Eastern Europe, to the war crimes committed by Russian forces, Putin's Russia is a threat to global stability. You would agree with your prior statement, right, that Putin's Russia is a threat to global stability?
I would agree that in my role as Secretary of State, my job is to bring Russia to the table to end the war, and that's what we're trying to do right now. We're trying to end the war so that more people don't die.
Thank you. And trying to end the war, I simply note that Putin on Palm Sunday launched a barrage of missiles, killed a bunch of civilians. Right before his conversation with Trump recently, he launched a bunch of missiles, killed a bunch of civilians. So clearly, Putin is giving the middle finger to you and to the president. I urge you to defeat Putin on the battlefield. That's the only way to get him to the negotiating table. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes.
What Rubio is doing throughout this entire exchange isn't confusion or poor communication. It's strategic narrowing of responsibility. He happily accepts broad, noble-sounding principles when they make him look good, then instantly shrinks their meaning the second they start constraining him. That's why he can say no one is above the law with total confidence, and then immediately argue that courts can't meaningfully direct executive action. Those two positions cannot coexist. From a basic American civic standpoint, this should alarm every single person watching. The Supreme Court doesn't issue suggestions. A unanimous 9-0 ruling is the strongest legal signal our system can produce. When an administration responds with "we're following it," but refuses to show evidence, describe concrete steps, or even acknowledge congressional oversight, that undermines the entire idea of checks and balances. Courts don't enforce rulings with trust, they enforce them with compliance. Rubio keeps hiding behind foreign policy as if it's some constitutional black hole where normal rules don't apply. But foreign policy is still exercised by a government bound by law. If executive officials can simply relabel a court order as a diplomatic inconvenience, then due process becomes optional for people without power. That's a dangerous precedent, especially when the government already admitted a mistake in court. And notice how often Rubio replaces answers with abstractions. He doesn't deny the ruling. He doesn't deny responsibility. He just dissolves specifics into vague assertions. We've taken steps. We are following it. I can't tell you. That's not leadership under scrutiny. That's insulation from scrutiny. The Ukraine portion exposes the same pattern. Rubio wants to own his past hawkish statements because they poll well and sound morally clear. But when confronted with present-day contradictions, the clarity vanishes. Ending a war is a noble goal, but history is crystal clear. Wars don't end because aggressors feel respected. They end when the cost becomes higher than the gain. Putin launching missiles at civilians while diplomatic outreach continues is not a peace signal. It's a message of contempt. When Rubio says the goal is to bring Russia to the table, he avoids explaining why Russia would feel any pressure to negotiate while it keeps striking civilian targets with little consequence. That's not realism. That's wishful thinking. And pretending otherwise doesn't save lives. It risks more of them. Taken together, this exchange shows a deeper problem than any single policy disagreement. It shows a governing mindset that treats accountability as optional, transparency as negotiable, and constitutional limits as flexible when power is involved. Americans are told the system works because no branch dominates the others. What Rubio demonstrates here is how easily that balance erodes when officials decide oversight is an inconvenience instead of a sacred duty. This isn't about scoring points or party loyalty. It's about whether the rules mean the same thing for everyone. If the executive branch can acknowledge a Supreme Court ruling while effectively sidestepping it, then the promise of equal justice collapses. And once that precedent is set, it doesn't matter who's in power next. That's why moments like this matter, and why people should pay attention when the logic stops lining up with the words. If you're as fed up as I am with the dodges, the deflections, and the trust us games, smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and hit subscribe right now. We are not letting this slide? More coming your way. Thanks for watching, stay sharp, stay informed. See you in the next one.